Good evening, Kaiser here. We are looking at an old deck this time. It's a design by Peter that I've played in the past. I've won a tournament with it, and I thought it might be a good time to revisit it because some of the new cards that have come out recently might be good additions to this deck. So let's have a look. We'll start with our doorways. We have the Curious Tent and a Temporal Micro Wormhole this time. And in the mission phase, we show our opponent that we are running 6 copies of the Universal Construct Depot. It's a mission that your opponent cannot steal because it simply doesn't have any requirements and affiliation icons for them to attempt. So it's universal, but it's safe. The downside is that with 30 points, it doesn't give us a lot of money when we solve it, and it also needs a water. But it's in the alpha quadrant, so we first have to get in water, who are usually native to the gamma quadrant, over to the alpha quadrant, so we might have to jump through some hoops. Now, what we're trying to do here is we give the Dominion some help in the form of Federation cards, because the Federation guys will give us mission specialists, like Toby Russell and Leah Brahms, and later on we'll bring in 2 different mission specialists with navigation. So we'll score 5 points for each of those skills used: navigation, physics, and engineer, for 50 points, meaning with 3 missions we can get to 150. So we even have a bit of a cushion in case we lose some points to lack of preparation. We still get to the 140 that we need in OTF if we're not doing a planet mission and a space mission. Okay, but we'll look at the setup in detail here. So the mission specialists will come out in a moment. We have Dominion war efforts and assigned support personnel with Dominion that gives us a steady stream of Jem'Hadar that we can download every turn, or at least until we run out of them, but it should give us enough fuel for 7 or 8 turns at least. We have New Arrivals, which gives us an extra free play for Universal Personnel and an extra card draw. We have assigned mission specialists that we've seen. We are running a neutral outpost here, so our mission specialists will go there. There's also Defend Homeworld, which we leave with the backside up for the moment, and Ultimatum, which we'll talk about on turn 2. So we seed our outpost wherever. Whether we want to intimidate our opponent and seed close to where they are, or far away from them if we think they might be more aggressive than we are, or somewhere in the middle, it doesn't really matter. Just put it somewhere. And then we'll also seed Reunite Legends there. That lets us download a Classic Films ship. Here are mission specialists, and we also have established Dominion Foothold. This is simply a card that can give us another 10 points, so if we are playing against a heavy point loss strategy, that gives us some more of a cushion, or if some of our mission specialists die. Alright, with that setup, we can already shuffle our deck and just have a look at a typical starting hand. What we should find is a mix of Federation and Dominion personnel, including at least 1 universal guy that we can use as our free play. So let's shuffle and draw 7. So we see Federation, we see Dominion. Our first action will usually be using the space door that I forgot to seed. There it is. The space door to turn our card play into a download of a ship. That is going to be the Jem'Hadar warship, a card that is native to the Gamma Quadrant, but Space Door allows us to play it to that outpost. So we bring out the Jem'Hadar warship. It's compatible with the neutral outpost. It doesn't matter that there are Federation personnel aboard the outpost. What matters here is that we report the ship docked at the neutral outpost, and we have compatibility there, Dominion and neutral. Okay, so that was our card play. That gives us a free play of a universal personnel. Now we could play one of the Jem'Hadar directly to the ship with assigned support personnel, or we could also play a universal personal to the outpost, then it would have to be compatible with these guys. But for example, the Alice series Android does that just fine. We'll keep our Gemada for the moment because we can use them as a draw engine once we have Deyos out. So our free play here is the Alice series, and then we proceed to our orders phase. We'll start that off by using Temporal Micro Wormhole to download Space-Time Portal. We need that so that later on we can play alternate universe cards. As you can see, we've got some of them, and the Temporal Micro Wormhole will be gone in a moment. Why will it be gone? Because now we flip Defend Homeworld and discard it to download a Security Personal. We haven't got it in opening hand, so it must be somewhere in the deck. There he is. Deyos, he's native to the Gamma Quadrant. That means in order to play him aboard the ship there, we need to discard the Temporal Micro Wormhole. We can still play alternate universe cards, but only one per turn. So, Deyos is out. We cannot move him over to the outpost because there we have Federation personnel, and right now these are not compatible. We need to fix that. So, we'll have a look at Reunite Legends. It allows us to once per game download a classic films ship. We'll download the Enterprise A. I'll just move the Established Dominion Foothold to a different mission for the moment. So we'll download the USS Enterprise A. It reports to the neutral outpost, docked. It doesn't matter that there is a Gemada warship also docked there. What matters is that this ship is compatible with this outpost. And this ship is also compatible with this outpost. And our crews are not mixing there. We are not forming a single away team. I've just checked in the Discord. Thanks, Charlie and the others who confirmed that this works. And we have these two ships there. And with that, we can already end our turn. We'll draw our regular, and we'll draw another card for the New Arrivals. It's our opponent's turn. During that, we'll download a Federation Classic Films Personal, and that is going to be Ambassador Sarek. And we immediately proceed to download any Federation treaty. So that's going to be the Treaty Federation Dominion. And then our compatibility issues are gone. Right, that brings us to our own second turn. We haven't got a Gemada in play, so far we haven't worried about white deprivation, and we usually shouldn't have to worry about it. We can now play a Universal Personal for free. If you have an engineer in hand, a Dominion engineer in hand, play that one, but any other personal would be just as fine. So we'll play a Universal Personal to the outpost. We could also use Assign Support Personal to play him directly aboard our Dominion ship. Doesn't matter here. Play him. Deyos allows us to draw a card. We could then play more Gemada for our regular card play, but usually we want to use that for personal we couldn't play otherwise for free. So we could play Mr. Spock, or we could also play Geordi LaForge. Let's do that for the moment. That brings us into our order phase. Now, if at this point we haven't got a Dominion engineer in play, our support personal download would be a Dominion support personal with engineer like Retana Var. He's in there in multiples because he's also got honor, which is a bit of an issue in this deck. But if we don't have, or if we already have an engineer out, we could also try and find useful skills like physics and navigation. Yeah, why not? Let's bring in Virakara as our support personal download and draw a card for that. Okay, then on our second turn with 3 personal played, it's time to do some stuff. Let's just have a look at all the personal we've got for the moment. With Deyos, who is a guaranteed download on our first turn, and the 2 mission specialists, we already have the staffing for the Jem'Hadar warship. So we can fly to the next door mission, show the Dominion Engineer, and then use the text on Ultimatum. Once per game, your Dominion Engineer at any Dominion mission in Alpha Quadrant may download their remote supply depot with up to 2 equipment cards. So we'll download a remote supply depot there, and we'll also go for equipment cards. There are several in the deck. Usually I go for a Ketracel White, in case our opponent surprises us with a white deprivation. And I also often bring in the emergency transport unit. If you haven't seen this card before, when your personal is being killed by a dilemma, you don't kill the personal, but rather you place them aboard the ship and stop them. So if it's at the planet mission, the personal is then put on a ship in orbit. If you have one there, then is stopped, and the emergency transport unit bounces to hand. And it would require a card play to get it out again, but it combos nicely with the remote supply depot because that says your equipment will report aboard for free, regardless of quadrant. So this is a very useful card against all those popular dilemmas that kill a personal and then act as a wall, like Rules of Obedience and Misinterpreted History and the like. So that's my go-to equipment to start the game here. There are other options as well. There is a Plasmadine Relay, and sorry, I brought in the Dominion pad, I meant to get the Ketracel. And there is also a ablative armor somewhere. If you're fearing an aggressive opponent, you could also use that as your first download there. You could also add Kukalaka there, who gives your Jem'Hadar more integrity, but integrity shouldn't be the biggest issue here. Okay, so we've done that. Then usually I would fly back and beam some personnel over to the outpost. I usually leave Deyos, and if I've got it, a second command star aboard the facility, so we would then be able to use going to the top, but right now we don't have a second gold star yet. So let's draw 2 cards to end the turn. And as you can see, our hand is filling up nicely. We are usually playing 2 personnel from hand and maybe an interrupt, but we can draw up to 4. 1 for the regular end of turn card draw, 1 for the New Arrivals extra draw, 1 when we report a Jem'Hadar to Deyos with assigned support personnel, and if our free play, our regular free play, is also a Jem'Hadar, then we can draw a 4th card. So usually your hand shouldn't be getting smaller at a quick pace, but rather you should be building up a slightly bigger hand over the course of the game. And then once you have your interrupts, then you should find your hand decreasing in size a little bit. So let's do our 3rd turn here. We play a Universal Personnel Baron. We'll invest the card play. Let's use Weiyun here. Double Diplomacy is good against Gomtu Shockwave and the like. Also, he can score us card draws if he's dead. And then we can use ASP to grab a support personnel. For example, stellar cartography and astrophysics. Or we could also say, now that we have a second gold star, we forego our support personnel download and grab a double leadership personnel. But usually I try to use the support personnel downloads and save the going to the tops to download personnel during my opponent's turn. So let's grab a Jem'Hadar for the moment. Let's have a look at what we've got. Mainly I'm looking whether I have 3 honor against Ankari spirits, and we see that we don't have a single honor, so it might be a good idea to start building up those, because that's one of the things that you often find in space there. Since we already have seen Geordie, we can also have a look at his special download, the ocular implants. Once each turn we're present, may glance for 10 seconds at either one away team or bottom seed card of mission. That's a super powerful ability to give you some intelligence of what's there. Maybe we'll encounter misseed. Doesn't matter, any information we gather is great there. Okay, but that's more or less what we do. We play a lot of guys, we throw them at missions, and we usually try to keep our mission specialists and Deyos out of the attempts, because they are the key personnel there. At this point, we don't worry about Sarek. We've already got the treaty out. If our opponent has the devil when we need the treaty to work, to make our deck work, well, more power to them. There are ways to get it back, but usually that sets us back quite a bit. Okay, we could use Sarek to just fly them around, attempt missions. We have a water, so we don't have to worry about lack of preparation. We don't necessarily have all the mission skills if we leave out some of the mission specialists, but by turn 3 we really want to go out and attempt. And then we'll just try and clear the dilemmas, and once that's done, we'll send in a ship that has a water and all the mission specialists and score 50 points. That's what we do. Let's have a look at some of the other cards that are in the deck. As you can see, the vast majority here are Dominion support personnel, all the different Jem'Hadar support personnel. There are also some Alpha Jem'Hadar that we can just play as universal free plays. For example, Fletika has archaeology and exogology, and leadership is great against misinterpreted history, also brings transporter skill and a gold star. Reva is one of the new cards from Dogs of War. Again, he's native to the Alpha Quadrant, plays for free as a universal personnel, is a water for the mission requirements there, has medical, has anthropology, so he's a very good addition to this deck. There are several copies in the deck of him. So that's more or less the backbone and our draw engine. Lamb is here for the anthropology, which is a bit of an issue. And once we've taken out these guys, we'll see that there are also quite a lot of Federation guys. We've got powerhouses like Jean-Luc Picard, Double Diplomacy, Honor. We have Scotty. We have an extra copy of Geordie. We've got Dr. McCoy, who can download I'm a Doctor, Not a Bricklayer. And the other things we have are mission specialists. A backup for physics in Mendon. We have the navigation on Gibson. Sam Lavelle as a universal that can download lower decks. As you can see, we have lots of universal guys. Then we have oddities like Seth Matthews, who is just a good combination here, science, exo, archaeology to fill in some skill gaps. Same goes for Goval, science, archaeology, exo, biology. Suzanne, engineer, transporter skill, honor, and a gold star. So these are just nice additions to round out our skill matrix here a little bit. If you don't like playing with these guys, there are dozens of other options you can put in. I just try to make sure that I have at least 5 or 6 instances of all the most common skills you find on dilemmas here. But you could certainly trim this deck a little bit. We can open the space door at any time to bring in a new ship. I'm a fan of the Universal USS Galaxy here. With range 8, we have good flexibility to move along our part of the space line here with lots of span 2 missions. And it also has a holodeck in case you run into emergent life form. So it can help you there. And there's also the Starship Enterprise. The download is very useful. There aren't too many options here, but we could grab Mr. Scott, Dr. McCoy, or Mr. Spock. So all good guys. And we could also grab Lieutenant Nagata, He's also a target for I'm a Doctor Not a Bricklayer, the download you have on Dr. McCoy. Again, he has honor, and engineer is a bit of an issue. We have lots of engineer as a skill on Jem'Hadar, but not in the classification box. There's Geordie and Scotty, and that's about it. All right, if we have a look at some of the other cards here, we'll see there's Luaran. Again, she's just a dominant card, science, diplo, biology, that complements the security and officer stuff that you will find on the Jem'Hadar. So let's move them all here in that pile. And then what we've got left in the deck are our interrupts here and the equipment cards. Equipment, the Plasmodine Relay, the Ablative Armor. There's another remote supply depot that we can download when we solve one of these missions, if we need to do so, just to have more places to play our equipment. That's the pad. And then we'll have a look at the interrupt selection here. We've got 3 copies of Going to the Top to download a double leadership personnel. So that's something we want to do during our opponent's turn, so to maximize our support personnel downloads. We've got a non-aligned option in Excalibur Carles in the tent. He's got a super useful ability. Once each turn, may gain a skill from a personal present until the end of turn. So as long as you've got 1 skill, you can double it up with Excalibur Carles. For Dominion, we have this Breen guy here. Not very interesting, but he has got medical, which can be an issue. So remember that with Going to the Top, you have access to a medical if you need to. And the Federation option here is James T. Kirk, mostly because he's got good attributes and skills, diplomacy and honor. He gives us access to any captain's order card, so he can download Lower Decks, a card that we could also download with Sam Lavelle. It's here in the tent. And his special ability of scoring 5 points each time he helps solve a mission is one that we can't use, because he simply doesn't have anything that he could use to help solving these missions. You could, in theory, play reflection therapy on him and give him one of these skills here, but we can do it just the same with mission specialists. So he's really just in there for his download and the good skill and attribute combination there. And the other interrupts here, Dr. Not a Bricklayer gets a geology personnel. Most of the time this is going to be Lieutenant Nagata. We have nanoprobe resuscitations, 5 of them. What it does is it plays once every turn to return the top card of a discard pile to hand. So if an important personnel dies, we can get it back. But most of the time, what we want to do is get back and replay our assigned mission specialists. It has an interesting last sentence. You may voluntarily discard objective at start of any of your turns. So at the beginning of our turn, we can discard this, then play a nanoprobe resuscitation as our first action of the turn, as our first card play, although it doesn't cost us anything, to return the top card of our discard pile to hand. That's the assigned mission specialist then. And this interrupt is discarded. And then we can use our regular card play to replay assigned mission specialists, giving us another download of 2 mission specialists. So that's how we then get out, in addition to the engineer and physics that we start with, our navigation mission specialist, and also the second navigation mission specialist. Gibson doesn't have to use her double navigation to complete this mission. She can just use 1 instance of navigation and let Angelo provide the other part. That's how we end up with 4 mission specialists there. There are also more mission specialists, medical biology, science, archaeology, mainly to have some more options to get through some of the dilemmas here. And that only leaves us with 1 more card there, and that's Renewed Spirit. It nullifies half of a combo dilemma. So if we run into things like Female's Love Interest and Garbage Cow, we can get rid of the Garbage Cow. Most of the time we have the engineers and the range, but we could nullify it. Or the female's love interest and plague ship. The plague ship part with the medical requirement can be a bit of an issue, so we have that to nullify that. But what's even more important here is the second function. It unstops your non-Borg away team or your non-Borg ship and crew at your universal mission, once per game per mission card title. So we can only use it once because all our missions have the same card title, but still it allows an entire ship and crew that has been stopped to basically do a second attempt, essentially giving you another turn. And that's a super useful ability, and it's definitely worth stocking 2 copies, 60 cards here. All right, so nothing fancy, no 2-mission win strategy where you have 5 points arranged there and 5 points arranged there to score you exactly 100, but rather we throw guys at missions, hope we find somewhere our opponent had to seed a planet dilemma. Most dilemma piles I see these days include at least 2 or 3 planet dilemmas, because there are just so many good ones. So you have very good chances of finding one. The more missions you have to do, the more your chances increase that you find misseeds there. And even though you have to do 3 missions usually, you will have a lucky break every now and then and find a dilemma that doesn't work at that mission, or maybe a combination of dilemmas that simply doesn't work as well as it would if the opponent had more options to arrange stuff, including planets. As I said, I've played a version of this deck a couple of years ago in Austria, won all the games. In 2 of the games I completed 3 missions. In the other game I actually managed to complete 4 missions. So even if you run into a balancing act or something that sets you back, you can always bounce back. You can score another 50 points simply by doing another one of these missions. So that's well possible. The biggest issue might actually be being outsped by some of the other solver decks that are around these days. And we don't have a lot of battle capacity in here. We could pick a fight with the Jem'Hadar warship, but our deck is so heavy with Federation personnel that we simply won't be able to muster a fleet that could still attack. Okay, so that's that. Let's have a look at the dilemmas, because that's worth talking about for a minute. Let's move all that stuff away. If you see these missions here, you must expect explosive decompression. If you've never seen this card, it kills X personal random selection, where X is the number of opponent's universal space mission with point boxes. So we have 6. If your opponent is running Q's 10 Civil War, they already have to attempt with 4 personal, so you could even use it just as a first dilemma there. If they're running a regular Q's 10, probably you want to have something in front that requires them to bring several personal, like lack of preparation. Maybe you're even lucky and make them lose 10 points. If not, they have a good crew that has all the mission requirements, and then you just killed 6 personal, and that's a heavy loss. Especially if you seed this at a space mission that has an attribute requirement, because then they will usually have 4 or 5 personal at least, maybe even more. And then you could play something like Rules of Obedience behind it to simply force another kill, maybe even a choice kill of a limited selection here. I'm also a big fan of doing it the other way around, starting with Rules of Obedience in front of the lack of preparation. What often happens in Rules of Obedience is the attempting player is stopped initially by it, loses a personal, and then they try to get through it. They will assemble a crew where they give you exactly 1 personal that can be targeted with the kill. So it is the same personal that has the highest integrity and the fewest icons. And when you kill that personal, they still have the geology and 2 honor and 2 security, 2 treachery. So often they do a minimum attempt there. Bring in the token guy that will be killed, and then 2 or 3 guys that clear the dilemma. And often when they do that, they don't have a full team that has these skills for the mission. and lack of preparation is not often expected after the dilemma. You could even arrange it like that, it would be just as fine. Kill a lot of guys, probably stop the next ones, bait them into doing a minimum attempt, and then surprise them with lack of preparation as the last dilemma. That has worked quite well for me in the past. So, big kills add 2 space missions. So if our opponent has the missions together, maybe you can identify a mission that they want to attempt, a dangerous one like Insurrection or a homeworld mission or something like that. Maybe put the dead end there then, and then put heavy kills around it. On the planet you have an oldie but goldie, Annonian land eel followed by Denevan Neural Parasites. You can have that at 2 missions. So you have 4 missions where you have dilemmas that kill a lot of personnel. So you're trying to buy more turns simply by attrition, by setting your opponent back quite a bit. And then you still have a couple of dilemma slots for wall dilemmas, misinterpreted history. I've put a faux pas in here. There's a love scour, scientific method. There's also Cytherians that you can put somewhere. And I'm always a fan of playing with linguistic legerdemain. A nice combo for that one I've found is Rules of Obedience. Often stops for a turn. Then our opponent comes back with a crew that is guaranteed to beat it even after the kill. Then put the flapjacks behind it. If they pass this with 2 or 3 or 4 or maybe 5 guys, flapjacks then kills half of them, but it rounds up. So if they clear this one with 5, 3 will be killed, and then chances that the remaining 2 have Anthro and Exo aren't particularly high, especially since this wall here is asking for completely different things. If they bring guys with 2 treachery and security, chances are they won't have the Anthro and Exo to get through this dilemma. So try it if you see a mission that has a lot of different affiliation icons. This might be worth a shot there. All right. So as always, a very good idea of Peter's here. I'd be very interested to see how this works out in today's meta, but I'm sure you could surprise people every now and then. If you know people are playing Balancing Act, you will have a much harder time. But it's a fun deck, and if you played, let me know. I'd be interested in hearing about it. Okay, that's it. Expand your power in the universe. If you enjoy this at all, please leave a comment or subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.